There's some pretty crazy things going on in the world of crypto. There's always some sort of drama, like the hearings going on with Gary Gensler, and no one is liking what he's saying, and everyone's burying him online, and maybe rightfully so, right? Some things he says are a little dumb. But also, Coinbase says that they might leave the US depending on regulatory clarity. So maybe the biggest exchange in the US is threatening to leave or thinking about leaving. For some reason, they are thinking about getting out. And for the biggest part, obviously, the regulatory clarity, I guess they either don't like the regulations going on or don't like that it's hard to do business because it's not there's not rules set out. So you can see Brian Armstrong, he actually was in the UK. So I think the things about maybe he's going to move the Coinbase to the UK. He was talking there and he said, in response to someone asking if he could see, the company leaving the US, he said anything's on the table, including relocating or whatever is necessary. And then I think that the US has the potential to be an important market for crypto, but right now we are not seeing that regulatory clarity that we need. I think in a number of years, if we don't see that regulatory clarity emerge in the US, we may have to consider investing more elsewhere in the world. So from that, it doesn't sound like he's like, okay, if we don't get what we want, we're done. We're abandoning the US, because no business is going to do that, right? The US is the largest economy in the world. So they want a part of that money. So no one's ever going to leave a US market or ditch the US, because that would just be bad business. But maybe it sounds like he's willing to put more money in other places or build out other places, which doesn't seem crazy either. I think you should do that, right? If you're a crypto company and crypto is global, then you can just you do everything globally, right? So you should probably have that service everywhere in the world. He's not going to leave the US. Maybe he is. Maybe he's going to pick up and ditch everything. Obviously, it'd probably be the headquarters move, right? Like headquarter Coinbase in a different country. That would be probably the biggest thing. But I don't see Coinbase really doing that, because they are used by the government. Like the government uses them. They have very strong partnership and stuff. So abandoning that would be, one, very costly. You'd lose those partnerships, relationships, and networks. And I don't think that, he really wants to do that. And he gives his little topic here on what he thinks regulation should be like, saying things like Bitcoin, Ethereum, and DeFi, even self-custody wallets should be regulated like a software business or something like that. And the only problem, like, I'm not smart enough to talk about regulation and rules and this and that. I don't know. But for this, grouping Bitcoin, Ethereum, and DeFi in the same thing doesn't really make any sense, because fundamentally, Bitcoin is different than everything else. Everything else in crypto, Bitcoin is different than. So Bitcoin is its own category. It is its own place. Everything else is kind of competing with each other or trying to do things like everybody else is doing it. And nothing is really trying to be Bitcoin, because you can't be Bitcoin. You can't replicate what Bitcoin was. So I do think that's the thing you have to separate, is Bitcoin and everything else. And I think that's probably the problem Coinbase has. They don't like that, because it's very hard to make money on Bitcoin only, which is why Coinbase became an altcoin casino. And in order for them to make the easy money and be that altcoin casino, they just need to continue issuing these altcoins. And I think the big problem that everyone has is there's so much scams in crypto. So many scammers, so many rug pulls, so many people knowing that they're preying on someone that wants to get rich quick and just stealing their money from them in some sort of scheme. So that's the big problem, is that the majority of crypto is literally that. Maybe not the big projects or ones who are actually trying to build something, but the problem is that it's so much that it's an overwhelming amount. So much so that this is why this is a conversation. This is why the regulations are a conversation, and why it's such a big deal. And why the SEC hearing or the SEC head, Gary Gensler, is in a hearing here. And you can see he's like obviously making claims that don't make a lot of sense. So he's just making everybody mad, right? Like this blaming Silicon Valley Bank's collapse on crypto is moronic. It's dumb. Like if someone had a bad business and it collapsed, You can't just blame crypto or something. You blame the business.
Biggest Silicon Valley bank, actually, when it failed, you saw this country's the world's second leading stable coin, had $3 billion involved there, DPEG. So it's interesting just how this was all had some crypto narrative as well.
And my time is up. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Even that right there, that short clip is disingenuous, right? Because stable coins, whether they're great or not, they're introducing CBDCs and they're actually the undercover CBDC stuff, or they shouldn't be trusted at all. You can look at Tether and say that you probably shouldn't trust Tether. I wouldn't trust them. They're a little shady in what they do. USDC, I wouldn't trust them either. They're a centralized point of failure and they're centralized stablecoin stuff. So you can probably trust them more than Tether, but is it worth it? Who knows? But saying that you saw the DPEG here, and I'm not going to defend stablecoins, but to say that you saw the DPEG of USDC when SVB went down is just kind of dumb, because that's the market price, right? So the market price of that, if people are panicking, can depeg that price. Same thing has happened with Tether before, where it gets depegged, but people are still redeeming Tethers one-to-one at Tether. So as long as that's okay, and you don't see that start to break down, or them not allow redemptions, that's when you have a problem. Not when the market price starts to move, because as you see, the market recovered it and recovered it all. And I obviously talked about it when it depegged and it was a big event, but ultimately nothing really happened from it. And when you look at these events like a depeg in USDC and say that the entire thing, you see how crypto plays with this bank, you're overlooking the bigger problem, because the problem isn't that the bank interacted with a crypto thing. The problem is how the bank was run and why it failed. That's what you should be going after and figuring out, not trying to pin the blame on something else that probably has either nothing or very little to do with it. But getting back to Coinbase, obviously them saying they could leave the US brings up a lot of people like this here saying if Coinbase leaves the US, crypto is dead here, which is kind of moronic, right? If crypto can die in any area of the world because a company leaves that area, then it's a terrible crypto thing. Bitcoin is not going to die because somebody bans Bitcoin. You see it in China time and time and time again. They ban Bitcoin and then they ban it again and then they ban it again. And Bitcoin doesn't die, it doesn't go away because it can't. You can't ban it like that. So if your crypto is good enough to be killed by one company leaving a country, then that crypto is terrible. Just kind of my thought. I like how people always assume this and say Coinbase or something happens, crypto's dead. If it's able to be killed, then it's trash. And also for Coinbase, like them leaving the US, they have so many relationships and networks and partnerships. You can see this. BlackRock partnered with them. They $10 trillion asset manager partnered with Coinbase to do something with crypto with their clients. A bunch of companies and people partner with Coinbase to do crypto stuff or use Coinbase to do custodial stuff. Even when the government had it sold some of the Seas Silk Road Bitcoin, that was like $216 million. They sold a bunch of Bitcoin. And who did they use to sell that Bitcoin? It was Coinbase. So Coinbase, it seems like a lot more posturing than anything else, where they are trying to say, you know, we are so important and we're going to leave if we don't get our way. But if they leave, they hurt themselves, because if they leave, they're going to rupture the partnerships they have, the relationships that they have, and even the government that's using them to do things when they get their hands on some sort of seized Bitcoin or anything. So usually that would be a bad business move, right? If you abandon all those relationships, that's not the smartest thing to do. So I don't see Coinbase actually going through with like an abandoning of the US and leaving the US. I see this more as posturing and them trying to get favorable regulation, because you got to remember, at the end of the day, Brian Armstrong, if you love him and say he's for us and he's for crypto and he represents everything I want, he is still going to act in his own best interest to do what's best for him and his company. That's what he wants, and he doesn't care about you individually. He's not fighting for you. He's fighting for him and his company. But that's going to do it for this video. As always, don't forget to smash the like button and subscribe, and I'll see you guys in my next video.